In this video, you will learn about the 12 pairs of cranial nerves, including the major functions for each nerve and their pathways through the cranium.
We'll start going through the cranial nerves, numbered in order 1 through 12. The olfactory nerve, cranial nerve number 1, carries the sense of smell from the olfactory epithelium of the superior nasal cavity into the olfactory bulb. Cranial nerve number 2 is the optic nerve, which also carries sensory information. The optic nerve carries the sense of vision from the eye, and it carries that information into the optic tract that will continue to the thalamus. Cranial nerve number 3 is the oculomotor nerve. It's sending out the motor commands that excite the contraction of most of the eye muscles. It extends out from the midbrain to the extraocular eye muscles. Somatic pathways regulate the skeletal muscles that move the eyes. There are also parasympathetic motor pathways that travel through the oculomotor nerve in order to regulate the smooth muscles inside of the eye. Cranial nerve number 4 is the trochlear nerve, a motor nerve that excites contraction of the superior oblique eye muscle. Cranial nerve number 5 is the trigeminal nerve. There are 3 large branches of the trigeminal nerve, and we'll go through and study each of those and see their functions. There's an ophthalmic, maxillary, and mandibular branch of trigeminal nerve. But the trigeminal nerve carries both sensory and motor impulses. Sensory information coming from the face, and the motor commands excite the muscles of mastication. For example, the masseter and the temporalis are muscles excited by the trigeminal nerve. Cranial nerve number 6 is the abducens nerve. This nerve starts from the pons and extends out to excite the lateral rectus eye muscle, a muscle that pulls the eye to direct your gaze away from the midline. Abduction is to move away from the midline. Abducens nerve causes abduction, that is to move your gaze away from the midline. Cranial nerve number 7 is the facial nerve. Cranial nerve number 7 attaches to the pons and then extends out to the face. There's a sensory pathway as well as a motor pathway. The sensory fibers, the afferent fibers of facial nerve, carry the sense of taste from the tongue. The efferent pathway, the motor fibers, excite the muscles of facial expression. For example, depressor anguli oris, the orbicularis oris, and orbicularis oculi, the zygomaticus major and minor. These are all muscles that are excited by efferent fibers of the facial nerve. Cranial nerve number 8 is the vestibulocochlear nerve. This carries sensory information from the inner ear, and the destination where the vestibulocochlear nerve attaches to the brain is at the medulla oblongata. Cranial nerve number 9 is the glossopharyngeal nerve. Both a sensory and a motor nerve. Sensory information includes taste, as well as there are receptors in the large artery traveling towards the brain, the carotid artery, detecting blood pressure as well as the concentration of gases like oxygen and carbon dioxide dissolved in the blood. Cranial nerve number 10, the vagus nerve, has both sensory and motor functions. The sensory information is coming from our visceral organs, including a baroreceptor that measures blood pressure in the aorta, the large artery that carries blood out from the left ventricle of the heart. There's also motor pathways through the vagus nerve. And so the vagus nerve regulates the activity of visceral organs through parasympathetic efferent fibers that travel in the vagus nerve. For example, they travel to the heart in order to decrease the heart rate. They travel to the digestive organs to stimulate the activity of the digestive organs. The vagus nerve attaches to the brain at the medulla, and then the peripheral attachments are in the visceral organs. Cranial nerve number 11 is the accessory nerve. It's a motor nerve, and it excites the trapezius and the deltoids. It's attached to the brain at the medulla and extends out from the medulla in order to excite those skeletal muscles. Cranial nerve number 12 is the hypoglossal nerve. Hypoglossal nerve is a motor nerve that excites the muscles of the tongue. So it attaches to the brain at the medulla and extends out to the tongue where it excites muscles of the tongue. Here we can see cranial nerve number 1 traveling through the cribriform foramina of the ethmoid bone. The branches of cranial nerve number 1 travel through the numerous foramina in the cribriform plate and then synapse with neurons inside of the olfactory bulb. And their function is sensory, to carry the sense of smell. Here we can see the pathways for cranial nerves 2 through 5 that are traveling out towards the eye or in from the eye. Sensory nerve, the optic nerve, cranial nerve number 2, carries visual information from the retina in through the optic foramen. The superior orbital fissure contains the oculomotor nerve, the trochlear nerve, the ophthalmic branch of the trigeminal nerve, and also the abducens nerve. We can see here cranial nerve 3, the oculomotor nerve that extends through superior orbital fissure from the midbrain to excite the majority of the muscles of the eye. Cranial nerve number 4, we can see just lateral to cranial nerve 3, is extending from the midbrain to the superior oblique muscle. Here we have a lateral view showing the nerves connecting to the orbit. Cranial nerve 6 extends from the pons out through the superior orbital fissure in order to excite the lateral rectus muscles that direct our gaze away from the midline. Here we can see the 3 large branches of the trigeminal nerve, the ophthalmic branch that travels through superior orbital fissure, carrying sensory information from around the eyes and the upper regions of the face, the maxillary branch that travels through foramen rotundum, carries sensory information from the middle region of the face, including the upper jaw, and then the mandibular branch travels through foramen ovale and carries sensory information from the lower regions of the face, including the lower jaw, the mandible, but also excites the contraction of skeletal muscles required for chewing, like the masseter and the temporalis. So here we can see an illustration showing the major regions of the face where sensory information comes from for the 3 branches of the trigeminal nerve. The ophthalmic branch is shown in the green color and is the superior region of the face. The maxillary branch, shown in pink, is the middle region of the face, including the upper jaw. And then the mandibular branch of trigeminal nerve carries sensory information from the lower regions of the face, including the lower jaw. It's shown in yellow here. Cranial nerves number 7 and 8 are the facial and vestibulocochlear nerve, was previously called the acoustic nerve, and so you can see it's labeled the acoustic nerve in the image from Gray's Anatomy. The internal acoustic meatus is the pathway for the facial nerve and vestibulocochlear nerve to travel in and out of the cranium. The internal acoustic meatus allows the vestibulocochlear nerve to travel from the inner ear, which is deep inside of the temporal bone, out into the cranium to carry information to the medulla oblongata. And the facial nerve, which carries both sensory and motor information from the face and tongue, travels through internal acoustic meatus, and then branches of it will come out through the stylomastoid foramen to reach the face, where it can excite the muscles of facial expression. And the facial nerve also carries the sense of taste from the majority of the tongue. And the facial nerve attaches to the brain at the pons. Here we can see the glossopharyngeal, cranial nerve number 9, the vagus, cranial nerve number 10, and the accessory nerve, cranial nerve number 11, which all travel through the jugular foramen. The glossopharyngeal nerve is exciting contraction of pharyngeal muscles, important for swallowing. It's also carrying information about the pressure of our blood and the concentration of gases like oxygen and carbon dioxide in the blood from the carotid artery. Then the vagus nerve carries both autonomic motor pathways of the parasympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system and visceral sensory information. The accessory nerve, cranial nerve number 11, is a motor nerve, and it excites contraction of the trapezius and deltoids. Here we can see the hypoglossal nerve, which is extending down through the hypoglossal canal of the occipital bone, just lateral to foramen magnum. And the hypoglossal nerve extends down into the tongue to excite the contraction of the muscles of the tongue, like genioglossus and styloglossus, hyoglossus.